Hello everyone, I'm Diane. Welcome to my channel Beyond the Sewing Room, and today I'm going to be speaking to you about confidence and in particular the ideas from this book, The Confidence Solution by Chloe Brotheridge. Now, I've read this book over the past week. I really enjoyed it. I got it from the library. Now, there are things that I agree with and things that I disagree. I mainly agree with most of it, and I have huge admiration for anybody who writes a book. So there's no getting away from that. I mean, it's a tremendous feat. So huge admiration for the person who wrote this, and all the views expressed today are my own. Now, I would like to say before we begin that I do believe that this is mainly for adults. Now, it would be great for a YA young person, a young adult to read it, but I do feel that the ideas and activities expressed in this book are more adult based, because as a young teen I'm sure there are more things available for you out there based on your age group, because we have different experiences as we move through life, and it's easier to access those experiences to help us through things. And as a teen, things can be very overwhelming. So if you're in school or high school, and if you're going through a bad time, and this can be a dreadful time for some young people, I'm sure that there's help available out there that's more targeted at your age group, but still wonderful ideas expressed. So first of all, let's get on with the video. Now, confidence is something that we all struggle with, most of us. There are some flamboyant extroverts out there who probably don't ever hesitate about anything, but to some degree I'm sure all of us suffer with this from time to time. Now, I was by no means a shy child, but I do feel that as I've gone through my life there's been different areas where I've felt I've struggled with confidence more as an adult maybe than I did as a child. I did struggle with it a lot as a teen. I found secondary school very difficult, and the book brings up a lot of things that I'm sure a lot of you, if you're going to read this book, and I highly recommend you do, you will recognise bits of yourself in there. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about, it's belief that you can change. Now, of course, we can all change. Our brains are changing all the time, and of course it's good to grow and learn new things, and hopefully we're all getting better as we go on through life, getting better at being humans. Of course, some of us are going to be shy and introvert, and others are going to be extrovert and the life of the party. Now, while we can develop our habits and our ways of looking at ourselves and our self-talk, and we can do these exercises expressed throughout this book, we're always going to be uniquely us. So we're going to be that person underneath that maybe doesn't like the large crowds, or we're going to be that person that's always the first in line and wants to get on the stage. So we can develop these tips, but we don't ultimately change who we are inside, and we wouldn't want to, because we wouldn't want a world full of people who were all exactly the same, would we? That would be really boring. Now, the next thing is if you want to free up your mindset. Now, I do feel that we need to free ourselves from what other people are thinking. So a great point in the book is that we all play the role of mind reader from time to time. I know I've done this lots, and I'm sure you have too. It's when we look at someone and they give us a look, or maybe we get a message and we read more into that than was intended, and we suddenly think that we know exactly what that person's thinking. So we automatically go towards a negative in this sense as well. We don't tend to think, oh, they think I'm wonderful and we're going to have a fabulous time and they're really happy with what I've done. We automatically go towards a negative. We read between the lines. We take that look as that they really dislike us, or they're thinking something bad about us, or we read a message and we take it in a completely negative light based on the minimum amount of information that we've got there. So we need to free ourselves up from this and thinking that we know what other people are thinking, because we don't. And the flip side to this is whatever that person is thinking, it's nothing to do with us. Now, I wrote this quote down a while ago and I can't remember who said it, but I really love it and it comes back to my mind over and over again. And it's, what other people think of us is none of our business. And it's not, is it? We all have our own thoughts and ideas about things, and that's nothing to do with anyone else. And what anyone else is thinking about us is also nothing to do with us and doesn't matter, because they're just passing thoughts. And if they don't like us, they don't like us. And this comes back to what I said before. That's easier to deal with as you get older. You tend to think, don't really know this person, or they're not important in my life. So if they don't like me, fine. But when you're young, that can be really, really difficult when you feel that everything that people do, you feel like, what have I done? Or what can I do to make them like me? What can I do to change this relationship so that we're friends? We're not going to be friends with everybody. People won't like us, and that's okay. And we maybe don't like some other people for no particular reason. So the world is full of people that like people and don't like people. It's not unique just to us. And we need to accept that as we go through life, that we can't change everybody's idea of us, and we don't need to. And that if people don't like us, it's okay. So the next point mentioned was about the inner critic. So we're always much harder on ourselves than we do tend to be on other people. So we will give ourselves really bad self-talk. So we will be chatting away, this inner dialogue going on and on about things we've done wrong or things we could have done better, or again what other people might be thinking, when we would never speak like that to other people, or most of us wouldn't anyway. So we really need to change that idea that it's okay to speak to ourselves in this way, and be kinder and be more positive with ourselves as we would with a family member or a child, for example. So that's something that we really need to change. Now the next topic was saying no, and I agree and disagree with many of the points raised here. We do need to be able to say no to things, and if there's something we feel strongly about, of course we should say no and not worry about doing so. But in some areas, such as in your work, it can be really difficult, and sometimes you will face backlash. People will treat you differently after for standing up for yourself, and there's no getting away from that. I mean, I've experienced this myself, and I have been confident enough in the past to say no to things, and also to speak out in meetings before in a polite way. And sometimes people just don't like that, and they will treat you differently, and people can be awkward and people can be difficult. So what I would like to say is be prepared, because there are times when you need to stand firm and be strong and true to yourself. And if people don't like that you've disagreed or that you've said no, and always do this politely, that is their problem and not yours. So I would say be prepared for the outcome of saying no to things, because sometimes in work situations, or that may be in a relationship, and of course you can say no in a relationship, but do be prepared for what will come next. So that is not to put anybody off saying no to things, but I do feel that sometimes there's that ongoing thing that people say to each other, oh, just say no, what's the worst that can happen? Well, obviously nothing really tragic is going to happen, but you do need to be prepared to accept that you may have some ongoing dealings with this person, and they may not always treat you in the same light. That doesn't mean we should be people pleasers, because people do tend to say yes to things all the time because they want to please and they want to make sure that everyone likes them. And again, people aren't always going to like you. And it's a really bad way to go about things if we think that we just have to agree just so that people will like us all the time. So do be prepared for that. But it's good to say no, state your reasons, state why you're saying no, and leave it at that. There doesn't need to be any more to it than that, I don't think. The other area where I think this can be difficult is if you are a quiet person and you're a bit anxious about going out, and you're working on this, if you've got close friends and you're always saying no to them and you're always turning them away, there may come a point where they don't ask you anymore. So do try and maybe push yourself to get out there sometimes, even if you don't feel like it. So while that is rejecting that inner no, friendships are important, and if you want to maintain friendships, sometimes you're going to have to put yourself out there when you don't feel like it, because if we say no every single time, those friendships may start to disappear. Now, with regards to everybody not liking everybody all the time, if there is somebody in particular that doesn't like you and it's in a workplace and they're making that very known to you and it's affecting your job or your ability to do your work, then you do need to speak to someone. Now again, this can be difficult. Maybe they have close links with the person in charge. Maybe they are the person in charge. If there is nowhere else you can go with this, sometimes I think we do have to accept the situation and move on and move out of that situation. You can still report this, and I feel you should, because some places do have institutionalised bullying going on. If you have this in your workplace, do speak to someone, whether inside or outside of work, if that's not possible. But if this is ongoing and this is going to affect how you feel about yourself, then maybe you do need to change the situation completely. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but the situation does still need addressing, and that might need putting in a formal complaint afterwards or something. But do deal with this. And if this is someone in your life that's making you feel bad all the time, maybe a partner or a friend, then you need to get out of those relationships. And if this is happening to a young person, you need to speak to somebody outside of the situation. So if it's in the family, outside of the family, or in school, you need to also deal with this. So that's just something else. So if people are being unkind to you and it's affecting your life on a daily basis, you need to be dealing with this situation. Now, there was an area that I did sort of disagree with in some respects in this, and it was that one about shame and trauma. So it was talking about shame and trauma, and a lot of the examples were to do with parents and parenting and so on. She gave some examples in the book, a few of which hit close to home as well. And now, I know some people go through dreadful things and need to seek therapy for this and have awful childhoods, and that's just awful. But there were just a couple of things that I thought, as children we all get told off by our parents, and our parents don't always say the right thing. And sometimes these things stick with us. I mean, I've got memories from my childhood of things that were specifically said to me or done or whatever. But our parents were just doing their best mostly, unless you have abusive parents. And some of the examples to me just reminded me of some things that happened. But I think there comes a point, maybe in young teens, this is really very much part of you and affecting the way you behave. But I think as we move through life and we're 20, 30, 40, we've got to accept that we've had chance to learn and grow and deal with these things on our own, and that we are now adults and we can't blame our parents for every little thing. So while some huge things that happen to people will just carry with them through life because they're just too awful, we can't remember every conversation, every telling off has been the whole thing that shaped us. I don't feel. Again, this is my opinion. You may feel the same, you may disagree. That's okay. So that's just something I thought about that. So we are responsible for us and things that happened a long time ago, tellings off that happened that were not abusive, just maybe they said the wrong thing. I think we need to leave that where it is. So this next point I really like. So it was the idea of practicing or visualising what's about to happen. So if you've got something coming up that you're nervous about and you go through it a few times in a positive light in your head. So the really nice idea was that if you were going to be somewhere doing something and you could go and get an idea of the building and where you're going to be and where you're going to stand, or just know and be really prepared about what you're going to be doing. I think that's really good. And I know in the past, if there's been a situation, I'm going to give an example. So if I was being observed about something at work, it was always really good that I knew what I was doing and I knew my job, for example. But if you're going somewhere and it's completely new to you and you don't have that, it can make it more prey on your mind. So I think it's good, the idea of a practice beforehand, but you can do this completely in your mind. So she calls it visualising. A lot of people are familiar with visualising things, but you do need to make sure that you do this in a positive light, because there is that thing where the brain can't always distinguish between what's true and what isn't with what we put in there. That's why our self-talk is so important, and that we're not just feeding it negative thoughts and ideas. So if you keep it positive and go through things, you can really help the way you feel about the outcome. So I really like that. So there were some really good points about standing up for yourself also. So of course we don't need to be rude to stand up for ourselves, we just need to state our case and move on. And again, accept that people sometimes might shout or get unpleasant or not be very nice and not speak to us after. But that is about them and not us. So we do need to remember this, but we do need to stick by our values and stick up for ourselves. So there's tips on that in the book. I'll not go too much into that. And the next one was social confidence. So there was a quote by Venus Williams, and she said all the things that she used to think before being invited to a party, for example, and you'd think she'd be the most confident person in the world, so it just shows it happens to all of us. And she would go through that negative, sort of visualising in the negative sense, all the things that might happen when she got there. So you would think that certain people, because of all their achievements and success, don't have these thoughts, but we all do. So it's just sort of reassuring that we're all sort of the same deep down, aren't we? So again, it comes back to imagining the good points and framing everything in a positive light when you're visualising that. But also remember, you can say no if you want to, and if you're not comfortable with saying no to going to a party, for example, or say, I don't know, maybe it was a big hen weekend or something like that and you couldn't cope with a full weekend, maybe you could compromise and just meet up for a day or a few hours and be part of it, but then maybe leave when you've, what should I say, reach your social limit for you. So you're still saying yes, but you're doing it on your terms. So I think that can be a good way of dealing with that. Also, if there was something like you were asked to do something and you didn't feel you could commit to the whole thing, so maybe somebody's asked you to help them with a project, maybe you could say, yes, I'll help you with this part of it, but unfortunately I don't feel I can do the whole thing. So you could compromise in that way. So all in all, I think the book is really good and it's telling us to treat ourselves better, pretty much to treat ourselves the way we would treat other people, and we don't often do that. So loads of good advice. I would recommend reading it. So there were of course a couple of little things that I had my own views on, but I'm sure you will too. We all have our own views, don't we? We've spoke about that just now. And a final thing is to make goals, write them down and try and take some action towards them. So whilever you're doing this, you're giving yourself that positive boost that you're working on something new and making yourself better in this area. So that's all from me. Again, that was The Confidence Solution by Chloe Brotheridge. I hope you enjoyed that. Please let me know in the comments if you read this book. Maybe I've said the name wrong, you can let me know about that. What your thoughts were, and I will be back soon with another video. Remember to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.